The glass doors of the Sterling & Co. building swung open, letting in a gust of cool morning air that cut through the stale warmth of the lobby. It was a Tuesday, and the atmosphere inside the high-end real estate firm was buzzing with the usual weekday stress. People in sharp suits were rushing around, holding coffees in one hand and phones in the other. Shouting about stocks and clients, into this busy world walked Alina. She didn't look like she belonged there, at least not in the eyes of the receptionist. While everyone else was dressed in fabrics that cost more than a week's worth of groceries, Alina wore a simple, knee-length blue dress. It was clean and pressed, but the style was timeless. Old-fashioned almost. Over it, she had a soft gray cardigan that looked like it had been worn with love for many years. On her feet, she didn't have high heels or polished boots. She wore comfortable brown walking shoes. She carried a large canvas tote bag over one shoulder. It looked heavy. She walked up to the front desk with a small, polite smile on her face. The receptionist, a young woman with very neat hair and a name tag that read Jessica, looked up. Her eyes swept over Alina, taking in the cardigan and the shoes. She didn't say hello immediately. There was a pause, a moment where her eyebrows twitched upward, just a fraction. "Can I help you?" Jessica asked. Her voice wasn't rude, but it wasn't welcoming either. It was the voice you used when someone tried to sell you something you didn't want. "Good morning," Alina said softly. "I have an interview scheduled for 10 a.m. My name is Alina." Jessica typed something into her computer, her long fingernails making a loud clicking sound against the keys. She stared at the screen for a long time, as if the information was hiding from her. "Alina. Last name?" Jessica asked without looking up.
Out!
She stopped typing. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. She looked at the computer screen again, then back at Alina. The name Thorne meant something in this building. It was the name of the family that owned the company. But looking at this woman in her simple clothes, holding a heavy canvas bag, Jessica decided it was just a coincidence. There was no way this woman was related to them. "Right," Jessica said, her tone changing. It became colder. "You're applying for the client relations manager position?" "Yes, that's correct," Alina said. She shifted the weight of her bag, looking around the lobby. "I'm a bit early." "I hope that's all right." "It's fine," Jessica said, pointing a manicured finger toward a row of leather chairs against the wall. "You can wait over there." Alina thanked her and walked over to the seating area. The chairs were sleek and modern, designed to look expensive rather than be comfortable. Alina sat down carefully, placing her canvas bag on the floor beside her feet. She pulled a small, worn-out book from her pocket and opened it. Trying to ignore the noise of the office, she didn't have to wait long before the judgment started. Two men came out of the elevator. Laughing loudly, they were wearing tailored suits that fit perfectly. They stopped near the reception desk to sign in, glancing over at the waiting area. One of them, a tall man with slick-back hair, nudged his friend. "Is that the new cleaning lady?" He whispered, but not quietly enough. The friend chuckled. "I don't know. Maybe she's lost. She looks like she's heading to a library, not a business meeting." Alina kept her eyes on her book. She had heard these kinds of whispers before. In her life, she had learned that people often looked at the outside of a person before they bothered to learn about the inside. She turned a page, pretending she hadn't heard a thing. A few minutes later, a young woman joined the waiting area. She was clearly there for an interview too. She wore a bright red blazer and black trousers. Her hair was styled perfectly, and she held a sleek leather portfolio. She sat down opposite Alina, crossing her legs and checking her watch. Jessica walked out from behind the desk with a bottle of water. She handed it to the woman in the red blazer. "Here you go, Sarah," Jessica said with a warm smile. "Good luck with the interview, Mr. Henderson is in a good mood today." "Thank you so much, Jessica," Sarah said, her voice confident and polished. Jessica turned to go back to her desk but stopped. She looked at Alina, who had been sitting there for 20 minutes. No water had been offered to her. "Did you want some water?" Jessica asked, sounding like it was a huge inconvenience. "No, thank you," Alina said politely. "I'm fine." Jessica shrugged and walked away. Sarah, the candidate in red, looked Alina up and down. She couldn't help herself. She was nervous, and seeing someone who looked so unprepared made her feel a little better about her own chances. "Is this your first time interviewing for a role like this?" Sarah asked, trying to make conversation. Alina looked up from her book and smiled kindly. "I've done interviews before. It's always a new experience." Sarah nodded slowly. "I've been preparing for weeks. This company is very high status. They expect a certain look, you know?" Alina nodded. "I understand. First impressions are important." "I just mean," Sarah lowered her voice, leaning in slightly, "you want to make sure you look like you fit the brand. It's a luxury firm." Lena's smile didn't waver. "I believe a company is built on how it treats people, not just how it looks. But I appreciate the advice." Sarah blinked, surprised by the answer. She sat back, sipping her water, feeling slightly foolish. There was something calm about Alina, a quiet confidence that made Sarah's expensive blazer feel like a costume. The clock ticked on. More people came and went. A security guard walked past, giving Alina a suspicious look, lingering for a second too long before moving on. The receptionist made a phone call, laughing loudly with a friend about her weekend plans. Ignoring the woman in the cardigan completely, Alina just sat there. She was used to being invisible. In her own life, she had chosen simplicity over flash. She drove a simple car. She lived in a quiet house. She didn't need gold jewelry or fancy logos to feel good about herself. She knew who she was, and she knew what she was capable of. But sitting there, surrounded by people who valued surface above all else, she felt a sting of sadness for them. They were so busy trying to look important that they were forgetting to be kind. At exactly 10 a.m., the elevator doors dinged. A man in a gray suit stepped out. He looked tired and impatient. He held a clipboard. "Sarah," he called out. The woman in the red blazer stood up immediately, smoothing her pants. "Right here. Follow me, please." Sarah gave Alina one last look, a look that said, asterisk, "Good luck. You're going to need a tan," walked off toward the elevators. The doors closed, and the lobby went quiet again. Alina was left alone. She took a deep breath and closed her book. She looked at the reflection of herself in the dark glass of the building across the street. She looked simple. She looked ordinary. But beneath that calm exterior, Alina Thorne had a sharp mind and a fierce spirit. She had managed million-dollar budgets, negotiated with angry stakeholders, and organized massive charity events. She had built teams from the ground up. She was the wife of the CEO, yes, but she had earned her own respect in the world of business long before she met her husband. She was here today because she wanted to work, not because she wanted a handout. Julian, her husband, had laughed when she told him she was applying for a job at his own company. He knew the culture there had turned toxic. He had dared her to go in and see the reality of it for herself. "Show me," he had said over breakfast that morning. "Show me what my employees are really like." Well, she didn't need to show him anything. He would find out soon enough. Because in the 20 minutes she had sat in that lobby, she had seen exactly what Sterling & Co. had become. It was a place of arrogance. It was a place where a canvas bag and a cardigan were seen as crimes. Jessica picked up the phone again, dialing a number. "Mr. Henderson?" "Yes. The other candidate is here. The one with the unusual name. Should I send her up?" There was a pause. "Okay, I'll tell her." Jessica hung up and looked at Alina with a smirk. "You can go up now." 4th floor. Alina stood up. She smoothed her dress. She picked up her heavy bag. She didn't look at Jessica, and she didn't look at the security guard. She walked toward the elevator, her steps steady and sure. She pressed the button. The doors opened, and she stepped inside. As the metal doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the judgmental lobby, Alina took a deep breath. The real test was about to begin. She wasn't nervous about the work. She was nervous about keeping her temper when faced with the people who treated others so poorly. She squared her shoulders. Simple Alina was ready, but the woman inside her was made of steel. The elevator began to rise, taking her toward the confrontation that would change everything. The elevator ride felt longer than it actually was. The numbers above the door ticked slowly upward. 1, 2, 3, 4. With every ding of the floor passing, Alina took a slow breath to steady herself. She had faced difficult boardrooms before, but usually people knew who she was. Usually she sat at the head of the table. Today, she was walking in as a stranger, and the weight of that was heavier than the canvas bag on her shoulder. When the metal doors slid open, the noise of the office hit her. Phones were ringing, keyboards were clacking, and people were shouting across the room. The air smelled of expensive coffee and floor polish. Alina stepped out, her shoes making no sound on the carpet. She walked toward the reception desk on the 4th floor. A young man with gelled hair looked up, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "Delivery?" he asked, not even standing up. Alina said, "I have an interview." "My name is Elena Thorne." The young man tapped on his keyboard. "4th door. On the left. The glass room." "Thank you," she said. She walked down the hallway, passing rows of cubicles. As she moved, she noticed heads turning. People stared openly at her cardigan and her simple dress. A few of them whispered behind their hands. It didn't bother her as much as the pity she saw in some eyes. They looked at her like a stray cat that had wandered into a dog show. She kept her eyes forward, her posture straight, refusing to let them see her discomfort. She reached the glass room. Inside, 2 people were sitting at a long table. One was a man with very round glasses and a face that looked permanently red, as if he was holding his breath. The other was a woman with extremely high cheekbones and blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. They were shuffling papers and not looking at the door. Alina knocked softly. The sound was barely audible over the office noise. "Come in," the woman snapped, still looking at her papers. Alina opened the door and stepped inside. She walked to the chair in front of them and placed her bag on the floor next to her. "I'm Alina," she said, standing until they invited her to sit. The red-faced man finally looked up. He adjusted his glasses, squinting at her. He looked at the cardigan, then at the face. It was clear he was confused. She didn't look like her resume sounded. "Sit down," the woman said, waving a hand dismissively. "I am Mrs. Sterling, and this is Mr. Henderson. We don't have all day, so let's make this quick." Alina sat down. The chair was cold and hard. "Thank you for seeing me." Mr. Henderson picked up a piece of paper. He scanned it, frowning. "It says here you have 15 years of experience in management. You don't look old enough." "I started young," Alina said calmly, "and I've been very busy." Mrs. Sterling let out a short, sharp laugh. "Busy doing what?" "This resume is a bit vague. It lists project leader for a charity. That's not real business experience, dear." Alina felt a small spark of irritation in her chest, but she pushed it down. "The charity managed an annual budget of $5 million. We coordinated teams across 3 different cities. I would say that requires business skills." Mr. Henderson took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Charity work is soft. We sell luxury real estate here. We deal with people who have millions of dollars. They expect a certain level of—" He waved his hand in Alina's direction. "Polish, you understand what I mean." Alina looked him in the eye. Her voice was steady. "I believe clients care about competence, Mr. Henderson. They care about results. Whether I wear a designer suit or a cardigan doesn't change how well I can solve their problems." Mrs. Sterling smirked. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "It does, actually. Image is everything in this industry. When a client walks in, they need to see success. They need to see someone who looks like they belong in their world." She looked Alina up and down with a look of pure disgust. "No offense, but you look like you're going to a bake sale." The room went quiet. The insult hung in the air. Mr. Henderson chuckled softly into his hand. Alina didn't look away. She didn't blush. She just looked from one of them to the other. She realized very quickly that this wasn't an interview. It was a show. They were enjoying this. They felt powerful because they could sit there and judge her, knowing she couldn't fight back without losing the job. "I think my clothes are clean and tidy," Elena said. "And I think my skills speak for themselves." "Skills," Mrs. Sterling said, rolling her eyes. "Let's talk about a difficult situation. Imagine a client is angry. He's screaming at you. He wants to cancel a contract. What do you do?" Elena didn't hesitate. "I listen. I let him speak until he has no anger left. Then, I apologize for his frustration, not necessarily for a mistake, but for the fact that he is upset. I find the root cause of the problem, and I fix it. Usually, people just want to be heard." "That's it?" Mr. Henderson asked, looking unimpressed. "You just listen?" "You can't solve a problem until you understand it," Elena said. "Shouting back never works." "Wow," Mrs. Sterling said sarcastically. She turned to Mr. Henderson. "Did you hear that? We should just listen to angry millionaires. I'm sure they'll love that." Mr. Henderson shook his head. "See, this is what I mean. You're too soft. This job requires a shark. You're a goldfish." They laughed again. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the laugh of people who enjoyed kicking someone when they were down. Elena gripped her hands together in her lap. She looked at the door. She wanted to leave. Every instinct in her body told her to stand up and walk out of that room. But she had promised herself she would finish this. She had to see how far they would go. "Let's try another question," Mr. Henderson said. He looked at her with a smirk, as if he had thought of a funny joke. "Let's be honest. You're probably applying here because you need the money, right? We pay well, even for entry-level positions. Are you in some kind of financial trouble? Is that why you're wearing that?" The question was incredibly rude. It was invasive and personal. It had no place in a job interview. Elena's jaw tightened. "My financial situation is not relevant to my ability to do this job." "It is relevant," Mrs. Sterling insisted, leaning forward. "Desperate people make mistakes. They make bad deals. They are easily corrupted. We need to know if you're going to steal from us to pay your rent." "I have never stolen anything in my life," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave. It became colder, sharper, and I am not desperate. I am here because I want to contribute. I enjoy working, do you?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Because looking at your bag," he pointed a finger at her canvas tote on the floor, "it looks old. You don't take care of your things. How can we trust you to take care of our clients?" Elena looked at the bag. It was old. Her husband had bought it for her at a market in Italy 10 years ago. It had been through gardens, libraries, and parks with their children. It had character. It had history. These people wouldn't understand that. They only understood price tags. "I value quality over flash," Elena said. "This bag has lasted 10 years. Your shoes probably won't last 6 months. Mrs. Sterling's mouth fell open in shock. Mr. Henderson stopped laughing. He slammed his hand on the table. "That is enough," he shouted. "You come in here looking like a mess, and you insult my shoes." "You insulted me first," Elena said simply. "I am simply treating you the way you are treating me. We're the ones with the power here." Mrs. Henderson yelled. "You are nothing. You are a nobody. Do you know who we are?" Elena looked at them. She saw the red in their faces. She saw the arrogance. It was sad. It was truly pathetic. They were small people trying to feel big by putting someone else down. "I know who you are," Elena said quietly. "You are the people who represent this company. And frankly, you are doing a terrible job." "Get out," Mr. Henderson hissed. He stood up, pointing a shaking finger at the door. "Get out of my office. You are hired. You are fired. You are never welcome here again." Mrs. Sterling stood up too, smoothing her expensive skirt. "Don't come back. We will be blacklisting you. We will make sure you never get a job in this city again." Elena stood up slowly. She didn't rush. She picked up her canvas bag and put the strap over her shoulder. She buttoned her cardigan, one button at a time. She looked perfectly calm, which made them even angrier. "I don't need you to give me a job," Alina said. Looking at Mr. Henderson, "I certainly don't need a lesson on professionalism from either of you." She turned and walked to the door. As she opened it, she heard Mrs. Sterling speak one last time. "Good riddance to simple trash," she whispered. Alina stopped in the doorway. She didn't turn around. She paused for a second, letting the silence hang there. And then she stepped out and closed the door firmly behind her. The hallway was quiet. The people in the cubicles were staring at her again, having heard the shouting through the glass walls. Alina ignored them all. She walked toward the elevator with a steady rhythm. She pressed the button. Her hands were shaking slightly, just from the rush of adrenaline, but she took a deep breath and pushed the feeling down. She hadn't lost. She had exposed them. She had seen exactly who was running the floors beneath her. Husband's office as the elevator doors opened and she stepped inside to go back down. She checked her watch. It was time to call Julian. It was time to show him exactly what his top executives were really like. The ride back down to the lobby felt heavy, but not in the way Alina expected. She thought she would feel humiliated. She thought she would feel like crying, sitting in that cold elevator watching the numbers count down. But instead, she felt a strange sense of clarity. The fog was gone. She had suspected for a long time that the culture at Sterling & Co. was turning rotten. But hearing it with her own ears was different than reading reports. It wasn't just about numbers falling or bad reviews online. It was about the people. It was about the way Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Henderson looked at a human being and saw nothing but a target for their own. Cruelty. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, the receptionist, Jessica, didn't even look up from her computer. She assumed, like everyone else, that Alina had been sent away packing. Alina didn't bother to say goodbye. She walked toward the glass exit doors, pushing them open with a firm push. The fresh air hit her face. It was warmer now, the sun high in the sky. The city street was noisy with traffic and people rushing to lunch spots. Alina took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air that didn't smell like floor polish or arrogance. She walked to the bench she had sat on earlier that morning. Far enough away from the building's entrance to be alone, she reached into her canvas bag and pulled out her phone. It was a simple model, not the latest smartphone everyone in the office seemed to carry. She found the number for her husband's direct line and pressed the call button. He picked up on the second ring. "Alina, how did it go? Are you in the building?" "I am outside," she said, her voice steady. "Outside?" Julian sounded confused. "Why? Did they keep you waiting?" "No, Julian," Alina said softly. "The interview's over." There was a pause on the line. "Already? It's only been 40 minutes. Did you leave? You didn't get scared, did you?" Alina let out a small, dry laugh. "I didn't leave because I was scared. I left because they kicked me out." She heard Julian take a sharp breath. "What? They kicked you out? Who? Why?" "It was the HR director and the VP of sales," she explained, looking at the tall glass building looming over her. "They didn't interview me, Julian. They mocked me. They made fun of my clothes, my bag, my hair. They asked if I was stealing because I looked poor. They told me I looked like I was going to a bake sale." "This is unbelievable," Julian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "I am going to call up there right now and have their jobs." "No," Alina said firmly. "Don't call yet. You need to see it. You need to see them when they don't know who I am. You told me the company culture was suffering, but you didn't tell me it was toxic." "I didn't know it was this bad," he admitted. "I trusted them to run the floor." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the cafe around the corner to get some tea," Alina said. "I will sit there for an hour. Then I will come back." "I want you to meet me in the lobby. Are you sure?" "I am sure," Alina said. "I want them to see us together. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize they just threw the owner's wife onto the street like garbage." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Julian said. "I love you, Alina. Love you too. Just hurry." Alina hung up the phone. She slipped it back into her bag and stood up. She didn't go far. She walked to a small coffee shop across the street, ordered a cup of hot mint tea, and found a table by the window. From there, She could see the front entrance of Sterling and Co. perfectly. She sipped her tea and watched. She saw a delivery man go in, getting hassled by the security guard. She saw employees going out for lunch, laughing and smoking, looking important in their suits. They looked like actors in a play, pretending to be successful while the theater was crumbling around them. She felt a pang of pity for them. They were all so caught up in the game of looking good that they had forgotten how to be good. While she waited, she thought about her own life. She and Julian hadn't always had money. They had started with nothing. Julian worked 2 jobs while she put him through school. Then she had worked while he started the business from their garage. She knew what it felt like to have holes in her shoes. She knew what it felt like to count pennies for groceries. That struggle had built character. It had taught her empathy. The people inside that building had skipped the struggle. They had bought their way into the image of success. But they hadn't earned the substance to back it up. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. It wasn't the most flashy car, but it was solid and respectable. Julian stepped out. He was wearing a suit, but it was a simple one, not custom-tailored like the ones Mr. Henderson wore. He looked tired, his hair graying at the temples. But he carried himself with a quiet strength. Alina watched him walk toward the building. He stopped at the door and looked around, checking the street. He saw her sitting in the window of the cafe. He didn't wave. He just nodded and waited. Alina finished her tea, threw the cup in the trash, and walked out. She crossed the street, the wind blowing her cardigan open. When she reached the sidewalk, Julian reached out and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, full of warmth. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking into her eyes. "I am fine," she smiled. "Just ready for round 2. "Good," Julian said. "Let's go." They walked toward the building together, hand in hand. This time, when the glass doors opened, the atmosphere changed instantly. Jessica, the receptionist, was still at her desk. She was filing her nails, looking bored. When the doors opened, she glanced up, expecting to see another delivery person. Instead, she saw the woman she had dismissed earlier walking in with a man. Jessica frowned. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice sharp. "You can't just come back in here. I told you, the interview is over." Julian stopped. He looked at Alina, then at Jessica. "I think you are confused, Jessica." Jessica froze. She squinted at the man, then her eyes went wide. She recognized the face from the company website and the annual Christmas cards. Her face turned pale, and her mouth fell open slightly. She stumbled backward, knocking her chair over. "Mr. Thorne?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "Hello, Jessica," Julian said gently, but his eyes were hard. "Is Mrs. Sterling in?" "Ah, yes. She's upstairs," Jessica stammered. "But good," Julian said. He didn't wait for a visitor badge. He didn't wait for permission. He pulled Alina toward the elevators, with Jessica staring at them like she had seen a ghost. As they stepped into the elevator, the security guard rushed over. He had seen the commotion at the desk. "Sir, you need a pass," he shouted, reaching for his radio. Julian turned and looked at him. The guard stopped when he saw who it was. Julian just pointed at the red emergency button on the panel, a button only the CEO had the code to bypass if needed, though he didn't need to use it. The sheer confidence in his stance made the guard step back. They rode up in silence this time. The air was thick with tension. Alina squeezed Julian's hand. "They are going to try and lie to you," Alina said. "They are going to say, I was rude." "Let them try," Julian said. "I trust you more than I trust anyone in this building." The elevator reached the 4th floor. The doors dinged. As they opened, the noise of the office stopped instantly. People looked up from their desks. They saw the boss. They saw the stern look on his face. And then they saw the woman in the cardigan walking next to him. Whispers started to spread like wildfire. Julian walked straight down the center of the room, purpose in every step. He didn't look left or right. He headed straight for the glass room at the end of the hall. Inside the glass room, Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Henderson were laughing. They were leaning back in their chairs, looking relaxed. They had just sent another candidate away and were feeling very pleased with themselves. Mrs. Sterling turned her, head and saw the crowd of employees standing up near the elevators. She frowned. Then she saw him. Mr. Thorne, the CEO. Her smile vanished. She sat up straight, panic flashing in her eyes. She elbowed Mr. Henderson, who was mid-laugh. "What?" Henderson snapped, turning around. When he saw Julian walking toward the door, with Alina right beside him, Mr. Henderson's face turned a shade of white that matched his shirt. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a loud crash. Julian didn't knock. He didn't wait for them to invite him in. He opened the glass door and stepped inside, pulling Alina in with him. The noise of the office outside was silent now, everyone holding their breath to see what would happen. Julian closed the door firmly. The three of them stood in the room: Alina, her husband, and the two people who had thrown her out like trash. The air in the room felt electric, ready to explode. "Julian," Mrs. Sterling squeaked, her voice sounding high and unnatural. "We weren't expecting you. If we had known you were visiting, we would have prepared." Julian looked at her, then at Henderson. He didn't smile. He didn't offer his hand to shake. He looked at them with a cold, quiet fury that was more terrifying than any shout could be. "I think you've prepared enough," Julian said softly. "In fact, I think you've done more than enough today. Don't you, Alina?" He turned to her, giving her the floor. This was her moment. Alina looked at the two people who had humiliated her less than an hour ago. They were trembling now. The power had shifted. They looked small, weak, and afraid. Alina took a deep breath. She wasn't the simple woman they mocked anymore. She was the one holding the truth, and it was time to use it. The silence in the glass room was heavy, pressing against their ears like a physical weight. Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Henderson stood frozen, their eyes darting nervously between the stern face of their boss and the calm, composed face of the woman they had laughed at only an hour earlier. The dynamic in the room had completely flipped. The hunters were now the prey. Julian stepped forward, placing a hand on the back of an empty chair, but he didn't sit down. He looked at Mrs. Sterling first. "I asked you a question," Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Don't you think Alina has done enough today?" Mrs. Sterling swallowed hard, her throat clicking audibly. She tried to force a smile, but it looked like a grimace. "Mr. Thorne, Julian, Well, we were just conducting an interview. A very rigorous interview. You told us to find the best people. We have high standards here." "Standards." Alina spoke up. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a knife. She took a small step closer to the desk. "Is that what you call mocking a candidate's clothes? Is that what you call asking if I am going to steal from the company because my shoes aren't brand new?" Mr. Henderson's face turned a deep shade of red. He sputtered, trying to find words. "Now wait a minute. You have to understand the context. This is a luxury brand. We represent the elite. We need people who fit the image. You looked unprofessional. I was just being honest about the company needs." Julian turned to him slowly. "Honest? You told my wife she looked like she was going to a bake sale. You told her she was a goldfish. You shouted at her to get out." Henderson's mouth fell open. He looked at Alina, then back at Julian, his brain struggling to process the word wife. He shook his head slightly as if he misheard. "Wife, your wife? Yes," Julian said. He gestured toward Alina. "This is Alina Thorne, the woman who manages our family finances, the woman who advised me on the purchase of this very building 5 years ago, the woman who knows more about client retention and high-level negotiation than either of you combined." Room felt like it was spinning for Mrs. Sterling. She gripped the edge of her desk until her knuckles turned white. She looked at the cardigan, the simple dress, and the canvas bag Alina had placed on the floor. In a flash, she realized how badly she had miscalculated. She hadn't just insulted a random stranger. She had insulted the person who owned the company. Mrs. Sterling tried a different tactic. She decided to lie. But she didn't tell us. She didn't say who she was. She just came in here acting like a simple person. How were we supposed to know? It was a test. She was testing us. She didn't tell you because she wanted to see if you had enough character to treat everyone with respect, Julian said, his voice rising slightly. She didn't tell you because her last name shouldn't matter. Her skills should matter. And you failed that test miserably. Lena stepped forward now. She wasn't angry anymore. She was just disappointed. She looked at Mr. Henderson with sad eyes. You asked me how I would handle a difficult client, Alina said softly. I told you I would listen. I told you I would find the root cause of the problem. You laughed at me. You said I was soft. Henderson shifted his weight from one foot to the other, sweating visibly. I was just joking. Office humor. You know how it is. I don't, Alina said firmly. And that is the problem. You think treating people badly makes you powerful? You think being a shark is good business? But a shark eats everything in the tank until there's nothing left. That is what you have done to this office. You have created a culture of fear. She walked over to the glass wall and looked out at the rows of cubicles. The employees were pretending to work, but everyone was staring at the scene inside the glass room. Look at them, Alina said, pointing to the staff. They are terrified of you. They are afraid to make mistakes, so they hide problems instead of fixing them. They spend more time trying to look expensive than actually doing their jobs. That isn't leadership, Mr. Henderson. That is laziness. Julian nodded. She is right. I came here today because I've been seeing the numbers drop. I've been losing long-term clients. I couldn't figure out why. Now I know. It's because the people I put in charge of treating people right are the ones treating them the worst. Mrs. Sterling found her voice again, desperation creeping in. Julian, please. I have a family. I have 2 kids in private school. You can't do this over one interview. I didn't know. I swear, if I had known it was her, I would have hired her on the spot. She's perfect for the job. Honestly. Alina looked at Mrs. Sterling. It was the exact reaction she expected. The woman wasn't sorry for what she did. She was only sorry she got caught. She was only sorry because the person she insulted had power. If Alina really was just a woman off the street looking for a job, Mrs. Sterling wouldn't have cared at all. If you only hire me because of who I am married to, Alina said, then you are even worse at your job than I thought. You hire people for their talent, not for their last name. But you didn't even look at my talent. You only looked at my cardigan. Julian took a deep breath. He walked over to the desk and picked up the file Henderson had been holding. It was Elena's resume, the one they had barely read. He closed the folder and tossed it onto the desk with a loud slap. I have heard enough, Julian said. I have seen enough. You're firing us? Henderson asked, his voice cracking. Over one little mistake? It wasn't a mistake, Julian said. It was a choice. You chose arrogance over kindness. You chose judgment over fairness. And in my company, that is a fireable offense. Julian walked to the door of the glass room and opened it. He didn't shout, but his voice carried clearly across the entire floor. Security. Please come to the conference room immediately. Outside in the main office, a hush fell over the crowd. You could hear a pin drop. The security guard from downstairs appeared a moment later, looking confused but alert. Yes, sir? The guard asked. Please escort Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Henderson out of the building, Julian said calmly. They are no longer employed here. Do not let them back to their desks. They are to leave immediately, Mrs. Sterling gasped, clutching her chest. You can't be serious. Right now? In front of everyone? Right now, Julian said. Henderson looked as if he might argue, but one look at Julian's face told him it was over. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He grabbed his suit jacket, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. This is a mistake, Henderson muttered as he walked past Alina. You'll regret this. I doubt it, Alina said softly. Mrs. Sterling followed him out. Her head held high in a pathetic attempt to keep her dignity, but tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. As they walked through the office, the employees watched. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. But the atmosphere in the room was changing. The fear that usually hung in the air was lifting, replaced by a shocked silence. Julian let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. He turned to Alina. I am so sorry, he whispered. I had no idea it was that bad. Lena walked over and placed a hand on his arm. It's not your fault, Julian. You trusted them. That is a good thing. But now you know the truth. She looked out at the sea of employees who were still staring into the glass room. They looked like lost sheep. What happens now? Julian asked. Alina looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. Now we show them how it should be done. Ow. She walked past Julian and stood in the doorway of the conference room. All eyes were on her. The simple woman in the cardigan. The receptionist downstairs was watching on a security monitor. The young man at the fourth-floor desk was watching. They were all waiting to see what she would do. Would she yell? Would she fire everyone? Alina didn't yell. She stepped out into the open office space. She stood on a small raised platform near the elevator so everyone could see her. She smoothed her dress and took a deep breath. Hello, everyone, she said, her voice clear and natural, not using a microphone but still projecting perfectly. My name is Alina Thorne. Some of you may know that name. Some of you may not. A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. I know today has been a shock, Alina continued. And I know things have been difficult around here lately. I know you have been working in a place that values the way you look more than the work you do. And I know that is exhausting. Employees were listening intently. Many of them were nodding. A young woman near the front, wearing a slightly too tight blazer, looked like she might cry. I want you to know that is over, Alina said. Starting today, we are changing the culture of Sterling & Co. We are going to treat this company like a place for human beings, not a fashion show. I don't care about your suits. I don't care about your shoes. I care about your ideas. I care about your hard work. And I care about how you treat the person sitting next to you. She paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. I am not just the owner's wife, Alina said. I am your new interim VP of operations. I will be working here on this floor every day, and my door is always open. If you have a problem, you come to me. If you have an idea, you come to me. And if you see someone being treated with disrespect, you come to me. The silence in the room wasn't fearful anymore. It was hopeful. Now, Alina said, clapping her hands together once, a bright smile breaking across her face. Everyone has been working very hard under a lot of stress. Why don't we all take a break? Julian is paying for lunch for everyone today. Order whatever you like. A cheer went up from the staff. It wasn't a polite cheer. It was a loud, genuine roar of relief. The tension that had choked the office for months vanished in an instant. Alina turned back to the glass room. Julian was leaning against the wall, watching her with a look of pure pride and admiration. He walked over to her and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. You were amazing, he said. We aren't done yet, Alina said, looking toward the elevators where the two managers had just been escorted out. We have a lot of work to do to fix this place. I know, Julian said. But we have the right person leading the way now. Lena looked down at her simple canvas bag and her worn-out shoes. They were the same things she had walked in with. But nobody was laughing at her now. They were looking at her with respect. Not because she was rich, and not because she was the boss's wife, but because she was the only one in the room who was brave enough to be herself. Asterisk the weeks that followed the Great Cleanup, as the staff secretly called it, were unlike anything Sterling & Co. had ever seen. The fear that used to hang over the cubicles like a dark cloud had completely vanished. The office was louder, but not with shouting. It was loud with the sound of talking, laughing, and the genuine buzz of people working together. Alina was true to her word. She moved into the glass office that used to belong to Mrs. Sterling, but she made it look completely different. She took down the cold, modern paintings and replaced them with a few framed photographs of city landscapes and a potted plant in the corner. She kept the door open, always, every morning. She arrived at 8 a.m. She wore simple clothes, maybe a different colored cardigan, or a skirt she bought on sale, but she always looked neat and happy. She carried her heavy canvas bag, and the employees stopped staring at it. Instead, when they saw the bag, they saw a woman who was secure in who she was. The change in the staff was amazing. People stopped staying late just to be seen by the boss. They stopped wearing painful shoes that hurt their feet. One young man, who used to wear a tight suit that made him sweat, started wearing comfortable chinos and a sweater. He worked better than ever. Elena walked the floor every day. She didn't carry a clipboard to check on people. She carried a notepad to write down their problems. Is the coffee machine working better? She would ask the receptionist. Jessica, who used to ignore Elena, now smiled whenever she saw her. Yes, Elena, it's perfect. Thank you for fixing it, good Elena would say. If you are happy, the clients are happy. Elena was tough, but she was fair. When people made mistakes, she didn't yell. She sat them down and asked, "What did we learn from this?" It was a new way of working for them, and it took some time to get used to, but the results were impossible to argue with. The numbers went up. Clients started calling to say how nice it was to deal with the company again. The Shark Tank was gone, replaced by a team. However, not everyone was happy outside the office walls. One rainy afternoon, about a month after the firing, Elena was in her office when she received a call from security. "Does Thorne?" The guard said. "There is a man down here insisting on seeing you or Mr. Thorne. It's Mr. Henderson." Elena looked out the window. The rain was beating against the glass. She hadn't thought about Henderson or Mrs. Sterling since the day they left. She assumed they had found other companies to run into the ground. "Send him up," Elena said. "Are you sure? Should I call Mr. Thorne?" "No," Elena said. "I can handle this." A few minutes later, Mr. Henderson walked into her office. He looked terrible. His expensive suit looked baggy, as if he had lost weight. His eyes were red, and he hadn't shaved in 2 days. He didn't look like a powerful executive anymore. He looked like a tired, sad man. Elena gestured to the chair in front of her desk. "Sit down, please." Henderson sat. He looked around the room, surprised by how warm it felt. "I didn't think you would see me," he mumbled. "I believe in second chances," Elena said calmly. "Even for people who weren't very kind to me. What can I do for you?" Henderson looked down at his hands. He took a deep, shaky breath. "I haven't found a job yet, Elena. The industry is small. People know what happened here. They know I was fired for the way I treated you." Elena waited. She didn't say a word. She just let him speak. "It's been hard," Henderson continued, his voice cracking. "My wife is angry. We had to sell one of our cars. The kids don't understand why we can't go to the expensive restaurants anymore. I keep thinking about that day. I was so arrogant. I looked at you and I didn't see a person. I saw someone I could step on to make myself feel bigger." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "I wanted to come here and beg. I want my job back. I know I don't deserve it. But please, give me a chance. I'll do anything. I'll work in the mailroom. I'll answer phones. I just need a paycheck." Elena looked at him. She felt a pang of sympathy, but she also remembered the way he laughed at her clothes. She remembered how he made her feel small. If she hired him back, would he really change? Or would he just wait until he had power again? She stood up and walked around the desk. She leaned against the front edge, standing right in front of him. "I can't give you your job back, Mr. Henderson," she said softly. Henderson's face fell. He put his head in his hands. "Please. It's not because I want to punish you," Elena said. "It's because I don't think you are ready for this environment. This office is a place of respect now. You treated people badly because you were empty inside. You need to fix that part of yourself before you can lead others." He looked up, hopeless. "So, that's it? I'm ruined." "No," Elena said. "You aren't ruined. But you need to start over. Truly start over. Not just for a paycheck, but for your soul." She walked over to her desk and opened a drawer. She pulled out a business card. It wasn't for Sterling & Co. It was for a small non-profit organization downtown that helped build houses for people who needed them. "I know a man who runs this charity," Elena said, handing him the card. "They don't pay much. In fact, the pay is very low. You will have to wear work boots and get your hands dirty. You will have to work with people who have nothing. You will have to treat them like kings and queens." Henderson looked at the card. It was rough. Simple paper. "Go there," Alina said. "Tell them I sent you. Tell them you need to learn how to value a human being for what is in their heart, not what is on their feet. Work there for 6 months. If you survive, and if you learn to be humble, come back and see me. Maybe then we can talk." Henderson stared at the card. It wasn't the fancy job he wanted. It was a job he would have mocked just a few months ago. But looking at Alina, seeing the calm strength in her eyes, he knew it was the only lifeline he was going to get. He stood up slowly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not leaving me with nothing. You still have your skills," Alina said. "You just need to use them for good, not for your ego. Good luck, Mr. Henderson." He nodded, turned, and walked out of the glass office. As he walked through the main floor, the employees watched him go. No one whispered. No one laughed. They just watched him leave, and then they went back to work. They were too busy to care about the ghost of the past. A little while later, Julian walked into the office. He had a spring in his step. "I heard Henderson was here," he said, walking over to give Alina a kiss on the cheek. "He was," Alina said. "I sent him to the build site." Julian smiled. "You are ruthless." "I am hopeful," Alina corrected him. "Maybe he will learn." Julian looked around the bustling office. "Look at this place, Alina. The revenue is up 20%. The client satisfaction score is at an all-time high." "You did all of this? You did this?" Alina said. "You trusted me. The staff trusted themselves." "You know," Julian said, looking at her canvas bag sitting on the corner of the desk. "I never thought I'd say this, but I think I need a bag like that. Mine is too fancy. It hurts my shoulder." Lena laughed. It was a warm, happy sound. "I can buy you one for your birthday. A nice canvas one." "Perfect," Julian said. Alina stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds over the city. She watched the people on the street below. They were rushing, running, hurrying to places where they felt they needed to be someone else. She touched the glass gently. She thought about the woman who walked into this building 2 months ago, the woman who was mocked and kicked out. That woman hadn't changed. She was still simple. She still liked her cardigans. But the world around her had changed because she refused to let it break her. She turned back to Julian. "Are you ready for dinner?" "Yes," Julian said. "Let's go home. Just us. No fancy suits. Just dinner," Lena smiled. She picked up her canvas bag, threw the strap over her shoulder, and took her husband's hand. They walked out of the glass office together. As they passed the rows of desks, people smiled and waved. Not because they were the bosses, but because they were the people who had brought the light back into the building. Asterisk, the elevator doors closed, taking them down to the street. It was just another evening, but for everyone inside that building, it was the start of a better way of doing things.